George Osborne travelled to Brussels today to defend bankers' bonuses and argue against a cap on rewards that would limit payouts to annual pay, or twice that if shareholders approve. The Chancellor told the meeting of Europe's finance ministers that the rules they want to impose could have a perverse effect, encouraging banks to raise salaries instead. But if he thought he'd get support from anyone around the table, he was much mistaken. Well, our business correspondent Siobhan Kennedy is with me now. Well, Siobhan, it's politically brave, not to say perhaps foolhardy, to go in and bat for bankers when you think about public hostility to bankers at the moment.
Well, exactly, Cathy, and that really undermines his strength of feeling about it. He went there today really to make 2 points. The first being that this cap will seriously undermine, he believes, the competitiveness of Britain's financial services sector. It's the biggest financial services sector in Europe, and he thinks over time the cap would make bankers and groups of traders up sticks and move to Asia and to the US, where there are no caps on bonuses. His second point is he believes the cap will be largely ineffective anyway because banks will simply increase fixed salaries to compensate for the lack of bonus. He made his points pretty clear today. Here's what he had to say.
I can't support the proposal currently on the table, but I hope that if we make some progress in the next couple of weeks, that we will have a package that we can all support, and that the finance minister of the largest financial centre in Europe can support wholeheartedly.
Well, he talked about progress there. What progress? What does he mean?
Well, I think he's pretty clear now that he's lost the argument on the cap. That will be introduced, it seems, because the 26 other member states want it to be. So what he's trying to do now is work out a way to make the bonus within the proposals as big as possible. Now, his way of doing that is to try and persuade the members to include a much higher proportion of shares within bonus. The theory being that the shares will grow big over time and therefore that the bonus will be much bigger over time than the current proposals, the cap proposals, would allow. But even here on this concession, it appears that he hasn't got much chance. Here's what the man leading the negotiations said today after the talks.
The British authorities have problems with the banker bonus issue. Now, there's very little further we can do for them because we pushed the negotiations to quite a degree, and we got the best possible compromise with the Parliament. So there isn't any more room left, really.
But it's not just the Chancellor, is it, looking for a way round all of this? The banks are looking for a way out or, ways to circumnavigate it too, aren't they?
They are, Cathy. It's really interesting. I spoke to one senior City source today who said the banks were very rattled by these proposals and are desperately, feverishly trying to work behind the scenes to wriggle their way out of them. One way, as the Chancellor said, obviously, is to increase salaries. Another thing being talked about, I understand, is an introduction potentially of a twice annual salary review, such that salaries could be hiked up in the middle of the year if the bank is doing very well so far as a way to compensate for smaller bonuses. Certainly all this talk, all this insecurity, this uncertainty didn't seem to have any effect on the markets today, though, Cathy. Both the FTSE and the Dow closed up at 5-year highs.
It gives you something to keep you busy. Thanks, Siobhan. John.
Well, we're joined now from Brussels by the Swedish MEP and member of the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs, Olle Schmidt, and in the studio here by the Conservative MP and member of the British Treasury Select Committee, Brooks Newmark. Olle Schmidt, was there anything that George Osborne asked for today that remotely interested Sweden?
Well, I think the main issue is here that, and that was said after the interview, that he is willing to compromise. And I think that is, of course, the spirit. And there will be a solution. I'm definitely sure that there will be a solution. And I think he has, Mr. Osborne knows that he has to make some efforts now. And I think he's going to do that.
Right. Well, there's some optimism from Sweden, but I'm wondering. I mean, George Osborne has gone there, won against 26, and amazingly against British public opinion.
Yes, but at the end of the day, London is the financial capital of Europe. We collect, tens of billions of pounds in tax revenues. It is a strategic industry for us, effectively, and he's absolutely right to do what he can to protect it. And I think in attacking bankers' bonuses, they're attacking the symptom, not the cause. The cause was a flawed credit system, flawed credit committees, and that's where they should be looking at is the credit analysis within banks, how much banks can risk of their balance sheets, rather than attacking individuals who perhaps may or may not be making profits for their banks.
But these were human beings who were involved in that catastrophe,
Yes.
and they were
Yes.
driven on by an absolutely massive cash bonus system, not even shares or future reward.
Yeah. Well, again, I think George is, just a second before we get to our Swedish friend here, I think George is right to put a greater emphasis on option schemes, share schemes that vest over time rather than a cash element. And that, to me, should be an acceptable compromise rather than an overall cap.
Ole Schmidt.
Well, I think the public support is demanding here. Usually I'm in line with what the British government is saying, and I was skeptical in the beginning, I must admit that. But this is a good balanced compromise. This is a part of a large package to try to protect the taxpayers of paying even more money. And my colleague from Westminster, you must admit that taxpayers, especially in Britain, with the Lloyds, with the Royal Bank of Scotland, you have paid enormously sums of money. And we did it in Sweden in the 90s. Don't you think that this could be a fair compromise and supporting the public opinion here? I think you are on the wrong side here.
I may be on the wrong side, but the rationale of your approach is flawed, and that's what I'm saying. It has to do with credit analysis, making judgment calls by managers on how much risk they can have on their balance sheets. Now, let me ask you this. If there's a problem in the insurance industry, as there was, where do you draw the line where the bonuses are? Do you cap bonuses in the insurance industry? If as it happened in the US, the auto industry collapsed, do you then say any company, whether it was rescued by the government or not, has to be capped? You can't be putting pressure on companies that were not bailed out by governments.
But don't you really think that there has been very serious human mistakes here? As was said previously here, it's made by human people. And I do think that they have been too risky. They have not measured the risks. And the result of this is that someone else have to pay for their mistakes. Now we are doing some changes. They are not major changes. I think you're exaggerating. And Mr. Osborne at least he was exaggerating a week ago. Now he is more willing to listen to arguments, I would say.
Isn't a bonus the size of your salary enough? I mean, a lot of people say that's far too much in itself. I mean, why do you need... I mean, bakers and butchers and journalists and the rest of it, they don't seem to need bonuses. Why do you bankers need them?
Well, I'm not a banker.
No, but
I never have been a banker.
You're talking for the banking classes, in a sense.
I mean, but that is up to companies to decide. That is up for shareholders to decide. That's not up for governments to decide. If shareholders agree with management that individuals who make, I'll come up with a big number, 50 million for their company should get more than 100% of their bonus, that's up for them to reward. Now, the issue that our guest from Sweden is dealing with has to do with the risk of one's balance sheet, and we should be addressing risk of balance sheets, but not on individuals.
You've made that point, but Ole Schmidt.
But do you really think that all the bankers in London, they have behaved in a decent way the last 5-6 years? I don't think the public opinion and you have the support, not even in Britain, perhaps not even in London City.
You're dealing with...
But this is politics, my dear colleague. This is politics.
You're absolutely right.
And it's also sending a signal. Enough is enough. We are not dealing with this.
I'm afraid he is singing a song which will be going down extremely well with the British public. They loathe what happened. They were repulsed by the behaviour of the bankers. They want action. And you're saying we don't need it.
I'm not saying we don't need it. I say we need to attack the problem. And the problem isn't necessarily the bonus culture. It is how one deals with one's balance sheet and the risk on one's balance sheet. But what I will say to those bankers who are probably crying in their dinner at the moment is that, this is the end of the greed is good culture, and they are victims of the problems that they created.
Brooks Newmark, thank you very much. Ole Schmidt, thank you very much indeed for engaging the way you have. I'm sorry the technology doesn't make it quite so easy to debate, but you made some good points. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you very much.